To make some changes to our existing workflow, add few jobs, and see how you can make use of the needs keyword. So in our existing workflow, I would like to make some changes. So first, I would like to change the names of the jobs. So first, I'll just name this as we are just building a file. So I'm just going to say build file. Then we are testing a file, right? So I'm just going to say test file. And for the deploy job, let's say we want to deploy to the AWS EC2 virtual machine. So I'm just going to rename the job names, and also within the build job, I would like to remove the sleep command, and in the test, even in the test, I would like to remove the sleep command. Okay, so far we have three jobs: build, test, and deploy. But before deploying, so what I would like to do is I want to make use of Docker, create some Docker images, test the Docker image, and push the Docker image to Docker Hub, and then deploy the Docker image to Amazon EC2 instance. So for doing that, you can add multiple Docker jobs. So I just copy paste the jobs and explain what I've done here. So I've added three new jobs. So these the names of the jobs are Docker build, Docker testing, and Docker push. So let me explain what I have written over here. So in the Docker build job, of course, it's going to make use of the stage called as Docker. I mean, all the three jobs which are there in Docker going to use the stage Docker. And since I've not defined the Docker within the stages part, it's going to give you a warning at the top. So I would like to execute the Docker jobs after the test. So I'm just going to use Docker after the test, stage. Okay. So in the first Docker build, so we are not going to really build anything for the time being. We will be doing that in the later sessions. So for the time being, I'm just going to use some echo commands just to run the jobs and explain the needs keyword. So we are going to use Docker build to build an image. I'm going to use a sleep command to sleep this job for 15 seconds. Then I have Docker testing job, which uses the same Docker stage. It's also going to run an echo command, but it's also going to fail the job. I'm explicitly using exit1 code, which is going to fail the job. And then we have the Docker push stage, which is going to again use the Docker stage, and it's going to use a couple of echo commands for logging to Docker and pushing to Docker. So within the test job or the Docker test job, let me also add a sleep command for 10 seconds. Okay. So this is how I have defined three new jobs. And if you want to visualize this, you can click on the visualize. It's going to show you a new Docker stage going to run three jobs. And by default, if you have multiple jobs within a stage, all the jobs will be running in parallel. They don't run in sequence. So first, let's see the default behavior and then modify the behavior as per our requirement. So let me quickly go back and commit. So let's commit this. Let's go to pipeline and see them in action. So we have various jobs, as you can see here. So we have the build, test. In Docker, we have three jobs and we have deploy. So total, we have around 6 jobs, and all the 6 jobs can also be, viewed here. Okay. So currently it is there in the build phase. So I'll just pause the video till it comes to the Docker stage. As you can see here, currently it has come to the Docker stage. And if you see, all the 3 jobs are currently in running state. So all the 3 jobs will be running in parallel in 3 different virtual machines. So let's see which one gets executed first and how the execution order is going to work. So the ideal execution order is that you need to complete the build first, then the testing and the push. But as you can see here, as of now, the push job has been completed first, which is illogical because even without building a Docker image, you can't push the image. It should ideally give you an error in real-time scenarios. So here it is successful because we are simply using some echo commands. And moreover, if you see here, the Docker test job has also failed, which should imply that the push job should never be executed. Okay. And since the testing job has failed, the deploy job was skipped automatically. So if you remember the order of execution in the default thing, as I've told that it happens in parallel. So in our case, the push was executed first, followed by testing, and then the build. So the ideal execution order, as I've mentioned earlier, is building the Docker image, testing the Docker image, and then pushing it. So how do we maintain that order? So that order can be maintained by using the needs keyword. So there is a needs keyword. So let's try to check out the documentation. So the needs keyword executes jobs out of the order. And if you have multiple jobs within the same stage, so those jobs can be executed in sequence. So not only that, the needs keyword can also be used to ignore the stage ordering and run the jobs without waiting for others to complete. So let's check both the scenarios. So first, let's go and add some needs keyword. But before that, I'll also explain about the DAG. So when you're using needs keyword, you can also visualize how the jobs are dependent on each other. So you can visualize them as a DAG. So a DAG is a directed acyclic graph. So let me just quickly open this. So there is a complete documentation dedicated to this. So I highly recommend you guys should look at this. So a DAG can be used in context of a pipeline to build, relations between, various jobs and how the jobs can be performed as quick as possible, right? And if I scroll down, it also, is going to give you this beautiful, visualization, which makes it easy for us to understand how the jobs are, dependent on each other and what is the relationship between them. Okay, so let's try to use the needs keyword. So the needs keyword can be used by simply, mentioning the name of the job which it has to, depend on. So let me go back to the workflow. So here, the test job should be dependent on the build job. So here, before the script, I can just select needs and I need to give the name of the job on which it has to depend on. So let me just, copy the Docker build. And then in the push job, it should wait for the Docker test job to complete before executing the Docker push. So that is how you can mention the needs. You can give multiple jobs as well. Okay, so let me quickly visualize this. And here you can see that there is loop over here or a small curve. So this says that, these two jobs are dependent. So the testing job depends on the build job, and whereas the push job depends on the test and the test on the build, right? So let's try to commit this and see how this works. So let's commit the changes. So let's go back to the pipeline. A new pipeline should be triggered for us. And here again, you should be seeing the same set of stages in jobs, but we have a new option. So we have group by stages, or you can also say how the jobs are dependent. So I can click on the job dependencies. I can say show dependencies, and it's going to show me that there is a dependency, between the Docker build, test, and the push jobs, right? So that is how the dependency is shown in the UI. And not only that, you can also, click on the needs keyword, which is going to give you a visual representation about how the jobs are dependent on each other. So here, if you just hover the mouse, it's going to show you that first the Docker build is going to be completed, then the Docker testing job will be started. And for the Docker push job, in order to start executing it, the Docker testing job has to be completed successful, right? So this is how the visualization helps you to understand the relationship between multiple jobs. So if I go back to the pipeline, if I go to stages, so I guess I need to refresh. It's taking some time to load. Let's go back to the pipelines. So now if you see, it is running the build job, and the remaining two jobs are not yet started because the build job should successfully complete in order to start the testing job. And after the testing job successfully completes, it starts the push job. So that's how the order of execution is now controlled using, the needs keyword. So now since the Docker build job has successfully completed, it has started executing the Docker testing. And if you see, the Docker push job has not yet started because it still waits for the testing job to complete. But if you remember, the testing job will fail because we used explicit exit1 command if you go to the Docker testing job, right? So if the Docker testing job fails, the Docker push job should be skipped automatically, right? So that's how ideally it should work in real-time scenarios. So let's go back. So if you see here, the Docker testing job has failed with exit code 1 because that's a code which we have used. And if I go back to the pipeline, you can see that the Docker push job is skipped because the testing job has failed. And also the deploy job is also skipped because one of the previous jobs has failed, right? So this is how you can make use of the needs keyword. So now let's check out the other scenario. So if you go back to the documentation, within the needs keyword, it also says that you can ignore stage ordering and run some jobs without waiting for others to complete. So jobs in multiple stages can also run concurrently. So how do we do that? So in our example, if I go back to our example, right? So currently we are just using the needs keywords to execute multiple jobs within the same job in sequence. But let's say the Docker build job, let's say, it should start as soon as the build file job is successfully completed. So what I can do here is I can use needs keyword. I can just mention the name of the job, build file. I guess that's the name of the job, build file, right? So now in this scenario, it should automatically start the build job as soon as the build phase is completed, right? Well, let's check out the visualization. So as you can see here, now you also have a visualization for Docker build, Docker build job. So it should start as soon as the build file job completes, right? So it will not wait for the test stage. It will directly start the Docker build if the build files, job is successfully completed. So let's quickly test this scenario as well. Okay, so I'll just add this commit message and commit it. So let's go to the pipelines and see the new pipeline. Okay, so again, we have the same set of jobs. So let me go to the job dependencies. So here, if you see, the job dependencies is a bit changed because the Docker build job will now start as soon as the build file job completes successfully. So you can also see this visually if I go to needs. So this is how it's visually displayed as well. So let's go back to the pipeline. So we should be seeing that both the test stage and the Docker stage will now run concurrently because the build job is now dependent on the successful execution of the build file. So as you can see here, both the stages are getting executed concurrently, both these jobs, the test file and the Docker build, because we are making use of the needs command. So the Docker build job, it just waits for the build file. If it is successful, it just starts executing, right? So the needs command can be used within the same stage, or you can also use this to run multiple jobs concurrently from multiple different stages as well, right? So that's how you can use the needs keywords. So I'll just cancel the pipeline because we have seen this multiple times. So let me just cancel this. So that's all for now, guys. Thank you. Let's have a quick look at how we can use variables at different levels within the pipeline. So within our existing pipeline, if you see at the jobs of the Docker build, testing, and the push, you see that we are making use of the same values in different jobs. And if you use multiple jobs with the same settings, it would be better if you define them using variables and reuse them in multiple jobs, right? So how can you define variables within the pipeline? So if you go back to the syntax reference, and if you go to variables at the bottom, so variables can be defined at the global and at the job level as well. And if you define variables at both the levels, so the job level variable takes higher precedence. And if you want to understand how variables are defined, so in this example, this variable is defined at the global level. So you need to use the keyword variables, and you can define your variable key and the value. And in order to refer this variable within the job, so this global variable will be available to all the jobs within the pipeline. So you can refer the variable using dollar and the key of the variable. So that is how you can define and use variables. So now let's modify our Docker build jobs to make use of variables at the job level. So I'll just copy paste few commands instead of typing and spending a lot of time on it. So just to save some time, I just copy pasted the same jobs but with variables. So if you see here, I created a job level variable. I'm using 4 variables: username, registry, image, and version. And in order to use this variables within the script, I'm just using the dollar syntax, right? The dollar syntax and the name of the key. So here I created a username variable, and I'm also referring that variable within another variable within the register variable. So even that level of dependencies can be used at the variables also. Okay, so this same set of variables are also used in the testing job as well. And the same set of variables are also used at the Docker push job, but one additional variable at the push job is the password, which is required for logging to the Docker Hub, right? So again, using variables, we are repeating the same variables across multiple jobs. So is there a better way to reuse variables across multiple jobs? Yes, we can define commonly used variables at the global level as well. So what we can do here is, so let me just copy up to the version. So I can go to the top. So let me just minimize the other job. So at the global level, I'll just define the variables and use these variables. And how do I refer them, right? So these are automatically referred in all the jobs. So wherever you have the same values, so you can simply remove them. So I can remove the variables from the Docker build job. I can remove the variables from the Docker testing job, and I can also remove them from the Docker push job. But the push job still requires a password only for this specific job. So I'll just keep the password available over here. So just to show you that demo, so what I'll do is I'll just add another echo command at the deploy job, and I'll try to refer the username and the password values. So let me just use username. So I can refer it using dollar username, and let's say password. So I can refer it using password. Okay, so this is how you can define the variables. So let me just quickly check all of these fields. Okay, so I guess everything is fine so far. So let's go ahead and commit this and check it out. But before committing, I also want to make one small change. So instead of using a hard-coded value for the version, I would like to use a different type of a variable. So we have something called as predefined CI/CD variables, which can be used to dynamically use some GitLab values. So here I just want to use a predefined variable such as CI underscore pipeline ID. So it's going to use the CI's pipeline ID automatically as the version. Okay, so I'll just add a commit message, and if you see the pipeline syntax is correct. So let's quickly commit the changes. Let's go to a pipeline. So we'll talk more about the predefined variables at a later session. So I'm just using this in this demo. So let's go to the pipeline. So this is going to run all the jobs. So I'm just going to, pause the video till all the jobs gets completed successfully. So as you can see here, all the jobs have been successfully completed. So let's go and check out how the variables were used in the Docker jobs. So since we are making use of the same variables across all the, three Docker jobs, so let me just go to the last job. So Docker push job. So here again, we'll go through the logs in a minute. So if you see here, it is making use of the variable. So if you see the command, so we're using echo docker login. So we're using $username and $password. So this $username was defined at the global level in the pipeline editor or in the GitLab CI file. And if you see, the value is replaced here while executing it. And even the password is also, replaced. But one bad thing about the password is it is exposed in plain text, and also the password is again committed in plain text to the repository, which is not at all recommended or best practice, right? So we'll try to mask the password and see how it can be masked in the next session. But for the time being, it is in plain text. Apart from that, if you see the docker push command, we are using the $version, and for the version, if you see, it is making use of a numeric value. So what is this numeric value? So if you go back to the editor, and if you see, for the version, we made use of a predefined CI variable. So we'll talk about predefined variables in the later session. So what is this, predefined CI pipeline ID? So this is the ID of the pipeline, which was, which got generated and executed. So this is the same ID of the pipeline which executed this job, right? So this is how you can refer images based on the pipeline ID as well. Okay, so that's about the password. So let me go to the last job. If you remember, we also have a deploy job where I was trying to, access the username and the password. So if you see, I'm using an echo username to get the username variable and the password value from the password variable. So here, it was able to access the username because this was defined at the global level, but the password field is empty or null because it was only defined at the Docker push job level. So other jobs cannot access the password variable because it's not defined at the deploy job. So if you go back to the editor, so at the global level, we only have the username, we don't have the password. So the password is only accessible at the Docker push. So no other job can access the password variable. And again, the password is hard-coded here. So in the next session, we'll see how you can, securely store and mask the passwords in GitLab CI/CD. That's all for now. Thank you. So now let's check out how you can mask variables using the CI/CD settings. So if I come back to the pipeline editor, and if you remember in the previous job, we made use of variables, and we are using a password variable, which is a sensitive value, which should not be hard coded in any repositories. So how do we mask this? So for masking this value, you can go to the settings, you can go to CI/CD settings. In CI/CD settings, let me just copy this password. So you have a lot of CI/CD settings available here. So one of the option is variables. Okay, so you can create a maximum of 8,000 variables for each project. So let me expand this. And currently we don't have any variables. So you can have variables at different level, like at the group level or at the project level. So currently I don't have variables at any level. So let me, create variables at the project level, and it can again have, various attributes also. So let's create a variable. So you can select if it is a key value pair variable or if it is a type of file as well. So I'm just going to select variable for the time being, and you can also associate variables with different environments. So we'll talk about environments in later sessions. So currently, let me just use all, and you can also add some flags. So is this a protected variable? If it is a protected variable, so this variable can only be used on pipelines which are running on protected branches. So protected branches are the things which you can add some additional security for deploying or approving or running the pipelines on. So we are not using any protected branches. So I'll just uncheck this. We'll check the mask variable so that the variable will be masked in the job logs. Okay. And you can also expand the variable, but we don't want to expand it for the time being. So you can have some additional description, which I don't want to give for the time being. So you need to give a key and a value. So the value is secure password, and the key, let me just use the name as docker underscore password. Okay. So let me add the variable. So as you can see here, a new variable has been added and it is having an attribute of masked. So one thing to remember is any user who has access to the CI/CD settings can still reveal the values and check it out in the settings page. Okay, so that is still available. And you can also, edit the values if required. So once you define the CI/CD variable, how do I use this in the workflow? So all you need to do is, again, within the job level, you can simply use the dollar syntax and give the key of the CI/CD variable which you have just created. The same thing can also be used in, multiple jobs, right? So even in the deploy job, I can now access this because this is like a global variable created at the CI/CD settings level. So it can be accessed by all the jobs as per my current settings. Okay. And again, if you remember, in order to run the Docker push and the deploy stages, if you go to visualize, it has to complete various other jobs just to see this small demo in our case. So I just don't want to run the other jobs. So you have a couple of options to not run the jobs. So you can either comment all the jobs or delete all the jobs, or you can also have an hack in GitLab CI. So what you can do is you can simply add a dot at the beginning of the job name. So when you add a dot at the beginning of the job name, it becomes a hidden job. So hidden jobs are displayed in the pipeline editor, but these are not executed by default. So we'll be using hidden jobs and we'll the hidden jobs also have, other functionalities. So we'll be exploring them in later sessions. But in this demo, I'm just, hiding these jobs. And when you hide these jobs, you will also be getting an error message saying that, the Docker push job is saying that it needs a Docker testing job. But since we made this as hidden job, it cannot be used. So you just need to comment this for this specific demo. And if you see, there are no more errors. So now if you try to visualize, it only has two jobs. The other jobs will not be executed because they are currently hidden. You just need to add the dot at the beginning. Okay. But more about hidden files we'll be discussing, at a later point. So let me try to commit this. Okay, so let's commit the changes. Go to pipelines. A new pipeline is triggered, but you can see it only has two stages compared to the earlier pipeline. So let's go here. So it's going to run both the jobs. So let me quickly check the Docker push job. Or let me just pause the video till both the jobs gets completed. Okay, so as you can see here, my pipeline has failed, but I'll try to explain why this failed. So first, let's go to the Docker push job. And if you see the logs, so here the password log is masked. So the job is able to retrieve the password value from the CI/CD settings variables, and it's able to use it. But the users cannot, see the password in the logs. It will be masked. So that is how, you can secure your variables using the CI/CD variable settings. Okay. And if you see the deploy job has failed, the reason why the deploy job has failed is because it is dependent on the previous job's, dragon.txt file, which I have commented out and it cannot access it. So for that reason, it failed. But ideally speaking, if it has access to the file, it could also, will be having access to the Docker password, because this Docker password variable is now defined at the CI/CD a variables level. So that variable will be accessible to all the jobs of the pipeline, right? So that's about masking the variables and securing them in the GitLab CI/CD. That's all for now. Thank you. Let's have a look at predefined CI/CD variables. Predefined CI/CD variables has a completely separate documentation which you can go through for different examples. So these are the variables which are automatically provided by GitLab in every CI/CD pipeline. They contain information about the job, pipeline, and other useful values relevant to your builds and deployments. So this allows you to write flexible and dynamic scripts without hard-coding any sensitive information directly in your GitLab-CI YAML file. And talking about the availability of these variables, so some variables are available as soon as GitLab creates the pipeline, allowing you to use them in the pipeline configuration or in any job scripts. And some other variables, become available only when a runner executes the job, meaning that they can only be used within the job script. Apart from this, there are also different variables which are only accessible during a merge request or during an external pull request. So we'll be exploring them, in one of our examples as we move forward, right? So you have I think hundreds of variables available, so you can quickly go through this and understand how they work. Apart from that, if you want to quickly see how the variables can be accessible within your job, you can also use something called as an export command, which is going to list all the variables available to to the script using the export command. Okay, so let's try to create a new project and export all the available predefined variables, and also let's see the most widely used variables within the jobs. So let me go back to my workflow, and in our previous example we used one predefined variable which gives you the pipeline ID. So now let me create a new project. I would like to work in a new project, so I'll just create new project. Let me create a blank project. I'll name this as predefined variables. That would be the project slug as well. I would like this to be within the demos group, and I want the visibility to be public, initialized with a README file. I guess I'm good with the other stuff, so let's create the project. So within the project, of course, you will see only a simple README file. So let's go ahead and create or set up the CI/CD. So let's configure a pipeline. Of course, I don't want to use the default pipeline, so I'll just remove everything, paste my own code, and explain what I have just copy pasted. So I have added a workflow name for this pipeline, and the name is Exploring Predefined Variables Pipeline. And I have 3 jobs. So the first job is export variable job, and it only does the export. So this is the command which we just saw in one of the documentation. So this export command, just lists all the variables available to the script. So let's see what variables will be echoed in our, pipeline. And then if you want to access predefined variables using the key ID, you can also use dollar and the name of the predefined variable. So here I just created another job named generic predefined variables, and within the script part, I'm just echoing some predefined variables like the user login, the user email, the author who committed the pipeline, the commit branch, project name, project URL, the job stage. So by default, if you don't give any stage name, it's going to be in the default test stage. The pipeline name, so this will only be available if you define the workflow name at the top. And I'm also just echoing the pipeline ID and the source. So that's about the second job. And in the third job, I'm trying to access few merge request predefined variables. Okay, so let's commit this. So if you see in the third job, I'm trying to access everything with respect to merge request labels, merge request, target branch, assigns, source branch, and title. So we have these three jobs. So let me, quickly push this to the main branch and see, what would be echoed back. So I'll just say added predefined variable jobs and commit the changes. So a new pipeline should be triggered. Let's go to the pipelines. Yep, so this is a fresh project, so you will only see that we have one pipeline in the running stage. And it has three jobs. All the three jobs will be running in parallel because I've not defined any stages or any needs over here. So I'll just pause the video till the job gets completed. Okay, so as you can see here, all the three jobs are successfully completed. Let's go to the first job. So the first job, if you remember, we were just trying to use the export command, and if you see, it exported a lot of variables, to be honest. So I think it's more than 100 variables were exported. So let's go up, right? So in the first job, it's using the export command, and if you see, it exported, I think, around 130 variables, if you count the lines or the line numbers. So it's exporting out some CI API graph URL, some build directory, the commit author. So I was the person who committed it. So it's giving me the name and the email ID of the author, the before SHA, the branch on which I committed, the commit message, whatever commit message I've added. So even that has been logged, the ref name, right? So this is about the repository. And if I scroll down, it also logged a few things about the dependency proxies and the users. I think this is related to the proxy server which GitLab is using. And then it has some logs with respect to the job which I'm running. So it has details about the job ID, the job name, the job stage, when it was started, the status, timeout, and few details. And then it also had details about the pipeline, right? So the pipeline ID, the namespace ID, project ID. It logged few things about the CI registry, and it also logged about the runner, right? The runner which is running this job currently, some server details, and few other details as well. Okay, so it also logged about the GitLab user details as well. So that's what is logged in the first job. So let's go to the second job, which is we used some specific predefined variables. So let's see what is logged here. So I was trying to log the GitLab user login, the person who is logged in currently, the user email, the commit author, commit branch, the project name, the project URL, the job stage, and few pipeline details. And if you see, all the details have been just printed it out, right? So I'm just printing them for demo purpose, but you can use them within your pipeline as required. So that's about the second job. So let's go to the final job, which is the merge request predefined variables. And here the job is successful, but if you see, I don't see the values. I can see the keys, but I don't see the values. The reason why you're not able to see the values is, so these variables are only available when you're working with a merge request. So we'll talk about merge request in the next session, but generally speaking, merge request is equivalent to a pull request within GitHub or any other, Git based products, right? So since I was just committing my changes directly to the main branch, there was no merging or no pull request in this scenario. So these labels are not printed because they are not accessible for the general committing. So these are accessible during the merge request. So if you go back to the documentation in the predefined CI/CD variables, so you have something called as predefined variables for merge request pipelines. So if you see the documentation, it says that these variables are available when the merge request is open or for the pipelines which are merge request pipelines, right? So I'll just stop the video here. In the next session, we'll briefly talk about what a merge request, and then we'll make the appropriate changes and see how to access these specific variables. That's all for now. Thank you. So what are GitLab merge requests? A merge request lets you propose merging changes from a source branch to a target branch. Does this remind you of anything? Both GitLab merge request and GitHub pull request serve the same purpose. They propose changes from a branch to be merged into the main branch of a code repository. However, they differ in terminology and some workflow implementation details. But both of these concepts allow the developers to create branching points for the changes, commit proposed codes like code, documentation, etc. for review, discuss changes with the team, and receive the feedbacks or approvals in some cases. And finally, the changes gets reviewed and potentially merged back into the main code base. So in the upcoming sessions, we are going to make use of this merge request concept in GitLab for merging the changes from one branch to another branch. Thank you. In this video, we are going to create a merge request to explore the merge request predefined variables, and at the same time, we'll also make use of the roles keyword at the job level. So if we go back to our workflow, so in the previous demo, we saw that, when we ran the workflow, so it was not able to, print or echo back the merge request predefined variables because these variables are only accessible for a merge request and not when you do a normal, commit to the main branch. So what I would like to do here is, before creating a merge request, so I would like to make sure that this merge request predefined variables job only runs if the source is a merge request. So how do I do that? So I can do that with the help of rules. So if I go back to the CI/CD YAML syntax and if I search for rules at the right side, so rules is a keyword which can be used to include or exclude jobs in a pipeline. So these rules are evaluated when the pipeline is created, and when a match is found, the job is either included or excluded from the pipeline depending on the configuration. So if you're working with rules, you can also, or it can also accept an array of rules. You can use various keywords such as if, changes, when, variables, and other options. So we'll be using a simple rule with an if condition. So if you scroll down, it also gives you examples for each of its kind. So we'll be using the if condition, and if the if condition statement is true, it is going to add the job to the pipeline, else the job will be excluded from the pipeline, right? So let's go ahead and try to use this. So you can define the rules at the job level in this scenario, and I'll use Control F, or I can use a simple if condition. Okay, so how do I use, okay, this has to be an array. So let's use an array over here. So what would be the variable which I want to use? So I would like to dynamically fetch the pipeline source. So do we have a predefined variable for that? Yes. So there is a variable called as CI pipeline source, which has the details about the source. So let us check about this option and see what are the different inputs which can be used for the CI pipeline source. So again, you can go back to the predefined CI/CD variables reference page. You can search for that specific variable, and here it's going to show you that the description about this specific variable, right? So this describes like how the pipeline was triggered. So it can be this many various values. So for our thing, I think I need to use the merge request event. So I would like to execute the job in case of a merge request event. Okay, so let me copy this value. So you have various other values as well which can be used. So let's go back. I can say, okay, so I think first I need to use $CI pipeline source. I can use the equal to operator over here. Okay. So here, so let me just quickly explain what I've done in the rules section. So here I created a rules. I gave it a if condition, I'm saying that if the CI pipeline source is a merge request event, then I would like to trigger this job. Else, this job will be excluded from the pipeline, right? So I'm just using the equals to operate over here. Okay. So here I'll just added roles for merge request job. And instead of directly pushing this to the main branch, I would like to create a new branch and create or start a new merge request. So I'll just name this as feature branch. So I'll just name this as feature 1. And you have an option to start a merge request. So I'll just say, enable this option and commit the changes. So as soon as I do this, a new pipeline will be triggered. And also it's going to ask me, to create the new merge request. So for the title, I'm just going to use the commit message, which I just added. I'll just copy the same title to the description as well. I'll assign this to myself because I'm the only user on this account. I don't want to add any reviewers for the time being, but I would like to add some labels. So you can also add some approval rules, but I think we can't use this in the trial account. So I'll just minimize this. For labels, yes. So let me add some labels like predefined variables. Okay. So so we don't have anything. So I'll just create this new project label. Let me color this in green, I guess. Create. Okay. So I'll also create another testing rules. So this is also, I'll just give it a blue color. Okay, so I just created two variables. Okay, so predefined variables and testing rules. And I think I'll just go ahead and create the merge request. Before creating the merge request, let me show you the pipeline which got auto triggered when I committed it. Okay, so if I go back, so this is at the project level. So I can go to build. So there is this pipelines. So there should be one pipeline which is already created and run. And if you see, this was created for the feature branch, right? If you see the name of the branch and the commit which I just made. So if I go and check this out, I should see that it only has two jobs. The reason it only has two jobs is because this pipeline was created when I committed the changes to the feature branch. So this was not a merge request, and hence the rules condition. If you remember, there was a rules condition. So let me go to the pipeline editor in a different tab. So since I added, okay, this is, I think, in the main branch. So I would like to go to the feature branch. So we have two branches now. So if you see here, for the merge request job, there is a rule. And since the rule was not satisfied, this job was not included in this pipeline. So you can also, visualize this. So if you go here, or if you go to validate, it's also going to show you that only two jobs were, created. So let me show you how the third job can be triggered based on this condition, right? So the third job will be triggered when I create this merge request. Okay, so let's create this request. And of course, the merge request, okay, let me just create it. So a merge request is created and a merge request pipeline has also been triggered, right? So if you again go to the pipelines, so you should be seeing a new pipeline got triggered. And here, if you see, there is a label called as merge request because this pipeline was created when you created a merge request. Okay, so let me go and see what is running here. It also contains the merge request number as well within the UI, which you can see here. So let's go to this pipeline, and you should only see that one job is running because within the workflow, you only added a rule for one of the jobs and only one job satisfied the rule which has to be executed at a merge request, right? So because of this rule, only that specific job will be triggered when you created a merge request. And if you go over here, right? So now you can see the variables are populated because this is a merge request. So you see the labels which I've added at the merge request. the target branch name. I assigned it to myself, so I see my username. I see the source branch name and also the title. So I just logged few merge request predefined variables. But yes, there are few more variables which can be used, in your exercises or in your, pipelines, right? So that's about the merge request variables, and also how you can use rules to include or exclude jobs from pipelines. So if I go back to the merge request, I can simply click on this, the number, or you can also click on merge request on the left side. So it's going to, show you the commits which were committed, how many pipelines have been run, what changes have been done for this specific merge request, the status of the pipeline, and if you have some jobs of artifacts, or if there are any reports, even those will be displayed here. So we'll be again exploring more about merge request and how it works with CI pipelines as we move forward in this training. Okay, so that's all about this session. Thank you. In the last session, we defined rules